Contains themes and scenes which may not be suitable for very young audiences. Parental guidance is advised.
We're working to connect a region of over 600 cultural bridges between our lands.
Welcome to the program. You're watching ASEAN in Focus. I'm Alma Angeles. We're coming to you live from Manila and Thailand. Hello, Esther.
Hi, Alma, and good afternoon to all our viewers. I'm Esther Odanga from EBC Thailand Bureau, bringing you the news in the dynamic ASEAN region.
On today's headlines, Myanmar's ousted leader Aung San Suu Kyi was jailed for 2 years on Monday after being found guilty of incitement against the military and breaching COVID rules in a ruling that drew swift international condemnation.
For $150 billion over claims the social network is failing to stem hate speech on its platform, exacerbating violence against the vulnerable minority.
Indonesia's Mount Semeru spewed more ash on Monday, forcing rescuers to suspend the search for survivors as aerial images show the extent of the devastation unleashed by the volcano's deadly weekend eruption.
And the Philippine Embassy in Thailand thanked the Iglesia Ni Cristo Aid to Humanity for the Filipino community there.
First in our news, Myanmar's ousted leader Aung San Suu Kyi was jailed for 2 years on Monday after being found guilty of incitement against the military and breaching COVID rules in a ruling that drew swift international condemnation. A special court initially sentenced the 76-year-old Nobel laureate to 4 years in prison, but she was partially pardoned hours later by the junta chief, who halved the sentence to 2 years. Former President Win Myint was also initially jailed for 4 years on Monday, but was also pardoned by Junta Chief Min Aung Hlaing and sentenced to 2 years imprisonment, according to a statement read out on state TV. They will serve their sentences by remaining under house arrest in the capital of Naypyidaw, the statement said, without giving further details. Zhao Mintun, a spokesman for Myanmar's military, told the AFP news agency on Monday that Aung San Suu Kyi was found guilty of incitement and of violating COVID-19 rules. In recent weeks, other senior members of the NLD have received long sentences. A former chief minister was sentenced to 75 years in jail, while a close Suu Kyi aide was also jailed for 20 years. Suu Kyi also faces multiple corruption charges, each of which carries a possible sentence of 15 years in prison.
Amnesty International immediately condemned the sentences against Suu Kyi. Aung San Suu Kyi, who was convicted in a ruling on Monday, was initially given a 4-year term. The sentence was reduced after a partial pardon from coup leader and Army Chief Min Aung Hlaing. Here's Emerlyn Hill, Amnesty Asia Pacific Deputy Regional Director for Research. Let's listen in.
This is actually another example of the Myanmar's very harsh response to those who oppose it. It shows that the military wants to eliminate any opposition to its rule, including the leadership of the opposition government. This is also an example of the harshness and the viciousness of the military once it wants to impose itself on the people of Myanmar. This is not about only Aung San Suu Kyi, but this is about the hundreds of people who have been detained since the coup just because of their peaceful exercise of human rights, just because they oppose the military. So the way they're going after Aung San Suu Kyi, it may be worse the way they're going after other people who oppose them but do not have the profile of Aung San Suu Kyi. It appears that the military junta does not really care about what the international community is saying. They have been like that, if you recall, 60 years ago when they took over Myanmar. They were like that. They were ready to thwart any kind of international engagement on what is happening on the situation in Myanmar. They were ready to do all kinds of acts and be criticized until the international community finally steps up to make the military accountable for its crimes under international human rights law. The military will keep on violating the rights of the people of Myanmar for many years to come.
Any comment, Ms. Suu Kyi?
Meanwhile, the UN's top human rights official has also condemned the imprisonment of Myanmar's state councillor Aung San Suu Kyi and called for her release. Ms. Suu Kyi was convicted of incitement and breaking COVID rules. She also faces charges of corruption and electoral fraud. The development follows reports that a military vehicle slammed into demonstrators in the city of Yangon over the weekend, leaving an unknown number injured. In a statement on Monday, UN High Commissioner for Human Rights Michelle Bachelet maintained that Ms. Suu Kyi's guilty verdict was the result of a sham trial and secretive proceedings. Let's listen in.
The UN High Commissioner for Human Rights, Michelle Bachelet, deeply deplores the conviction and sentencing of Myanmar State Councillor Aung San Suu Kyi following a sham trial before a military-controlled court without due regard for international fair trial standards. The conviction of Aung San Suu Kyi will only deepen the rejection of the military's rule. This comes a day after security forces in Yangon mowed down protesters in a truck and followed with the use of live ammunition against unarmed peaceful protesters. We call on the authorities to immediately release all those who have been arbitrarily detained, some 10,000 political prisoners. We also understand that some 175 of these individuals have already died in detention due to ill treatment and torture. The High Commissioner has expressed concern that these developments risk further exacerbating tensions and violence in Myanmar.
Myanmar's military took power in a coup on February 1 after declaring the results of the November 2020 elections invalid. More than 10,000 political prisoners are believed to have been detained, and at least 175 have reportedly died in custody, according to the UN Human Rights Office.
The European Union on Monday condemned the Myanmar ruling junta's jailing of ousted leader Aung San Suu Kyi as politically motivated and a blatant violation of human rights. In a statement from EU Foreign Policy Chief Joseph Borrell, on behalf of the 27 member states, the EU said Suu Kyi's sentence represents another step towards the dismantling of the rule of law. Borrell said the European Union strongly condemns this politically motivated verdict, which constitutes another major setback for democracy in Myanmar since the military coup on February 1, 2021. The military's actions shows complete contempt for the will of people expressed clearly in November 2020 elections, he said. It is imperative that the Myanmar military authorities allow a swift return of Myanmar to path of democracy, he added, praising the people of Myanmar for rejecting the coup.
On Monday, the United Nations General Assembly indefinitely shelved the junta's request for recognition, which would see their choice of envoy accredited at the Global Forum. Won Among Win, the foreign minister of Myanmar, which was rocked by a military coup on February 1, appointed on August 18 former military commander Aung Thurin. But the envoy appointed by deposed leader Aung San Suu Kyi, Kyaw Mo Tun, defied the junta to stay in his post and on August 21 asked the UN to keep him on. Zaw Min Tun, Myanmar junta spokesman, said the committee's choice did not reflect the reality on the ground. The junta has previously criticized the decision not to accredit their ambassador, saying it does not reflect the reality on the ground.
Young anti-coup recruits lined up at secret camp in Myanmar, hands behind their heads and stomachs braced, waiting for a drill instructor to deliver a punch to toughen them up for their fight against the military. Since the military coup in February, dozens of People's Defense Forces, or PDFs, have sprung up across the Southeast Asian country to fight back against the general's push and subsequent crackdown.
That tool now, tall, let the go nare, that tool, I can't go. Mccanzire, Evelyn, Mccanna, tea, Mooke, Evelyn, Mooke, I wanna. I
won't believe I hope. I could general type when my wing food, then we general, Nilang let them do, they don't let them take food at a job, Kulos general Pena Latin, then change general, she down to Yame. General, I think people won't believe our hope. Let you know name yet. The Cheshi map. Let me go. Let's see, Louis Aku, Yap Chancy, doesn't be an swing. Jonathan, take care of the Hamho, Blue Pit and Rogan Casaluare, the Chata Tani Pinelli of Yansan cooking. I remember. Piro Kuka, the Louis Aga, Loma Pusham Babu, send they Miashi Ebona, no Zatinable. Let's see Chenega, the General Yapinega, Lumia, name European and last or General, no Yonji Barebo, no Pilali Mebona.
In other news, Rohingya refugees sued Facebook on Monday for $150 billion over claims the social network is failing to stem hate speech on its platform, exacerbating violence against the vulnerable minority. The complaint lodged in a California court says the algorithms that power the U.S.-based company promote disinformation and extremist thought that translates to real-world violence. Facebook is like a robot programmed with a singular mission to grow, the court document states. The undeniable reality is that Facebook's growth, fueled by hate, division, and misinformation, has left hundreds of thousands of devastated Rohingya lives in its wake. The legal complaint argues that Facebook's algorithms drive susceptible users to join the ever more extreme groups, a situation that is open to exploitation by autocratic politicians and regimes. They charge that the social media giant allows falsehoods to proliferate, affecting the lives of minorities and skewing elections in democracies such as the United States, where unfounded charges of fraud circulate and intensity among like-minded friends. The mainly Muslim group faces widespread discrimination in Myanmar, where they are despised as interlopers, despite having lived in the country for generations. Meanwhile, Indonesia's Mount Semeru spewed more ash on Monday,
forcing rescuers to suspend the search for survivors as aerial images showed the extent of the devastation unleashed by the volcano's deadly weekend eruption. Rescue operations were suspended because of fresh volcanic activity on Monday. Ash from Semeru traveled up to 4 kilometers away after the Saturday eruption, Indonesia's geological agency reported. A sand mine company's office in Kampung Renteng village was buried after the eruption, trapping 15 people inside, according to foreman Hasim, 65, who, like many Indonesians, goes by one name. Rescue officials said some were buried inside their vehicles with no time to escape. President Joko Widodo on Sunday ordered a rapid emergency response to find victims after the scale of disaster became clear, said State Secretary Pratikno, who, like many Indonesians, goes only by one name. Many people who sustained burns had mistaken the hot mud flow for floods, so stayed in their villages, according to Luhamang Public Order Agency spokesman Adi Hendro. The country's geological agency said rain is expected in the next 3 days that could further hinder rescue work.
Ya, kejadiannya itu kan di sini warga itu kan masih kan nggak, biasanya kan banjir biasa gitu kan, nggak tahu kalau lava itu turun gitu kan, tiba-tiba langsung gelap itu aja udah wes gitu, langsung dadaan gitu, campur hujan angin langsung asap datang. Ya untungnya masih ada hujan, kalau ada kan nggak ada hujan nggak tahu warga tambah lebih parah karena apa, asap lebih parah gitu, jadi lebih berbahaya lagi karena masih mending ada hujan itu masih bisa bernapas gitu. Yang perlu dibantuan di sini tuh kayak masker perlu lagi, tiba-tiba ada susulan lagi kan, nah itu yang berbahaya gitu. Air bersih yang penting. Gitu, air bersih perlu, kayak anak kecil butuh pampers perlu gitu kan. Keperluan ya biasa sembako lah, apa yang keperluan dibutuhkan tuh kalau ada secepatnya gitu.
Dan yang satunya Randinya itu menyusul ayahnya ngasih lampu senter, nah ngasih senter. Tujuannya itu mengantarkan senter kepada ayahnya. Ternyata ayahnya sudah pulang, Randinya tidak ada pulang sampai sekarang. Dan di sini mungkin bersama-sama dengan orang 5 di sini nih. Mungkin ya bersama dengan orang 5 kan ada 5 orang mas, satu keluarga itu di sini tidak ada semua.
Total 10 orang belum ditemukan.
Ya, total 10 orang belum ditemukan. Daerah sini nih mas.
And here are some aerial images of the destruction following Indonesia's Mount Semeru volcano eruption as volcanic debris and ash blanket the Sumber-Volu village in Lumajang in East Java. Officials have advised locals not to travel within 5 kilometers of Semeru's crater as the nearby air is highly polluted and it could affect vulnerable groups. Ash from Semeru traveled up to 4 kilometers away after the Saturday eruption, according to Indonesia's geological agency. Let's take a look. And the news continues. Zero on Eagle News. Esther and I will be back right after this.
Alam namin ang iyong pagsisikap. Dama namin ang iyong mga sakripisyo. Kita namin ang pagharap mo sa bawat pagsubok. Kaya sa kabila ng mga hamon ng buhay, nandito kami para umalalay. Kasi katulad mo, gusto rin namin ang magandang bukas para sa kanya. Hatid namin ang dekalidad na edukasyon at makabagong pasilidad sa abot kayang halaga. Kaya huwag ka na mangamba. Sasamahan ka namin tuparin ang mga pangarap niya. Maaasahan mong sulit dito ang mga pinagsikapan mo. Sa aming mga makabagong pasilidad at sistema ng edukasyon. Mailalabas natin ang aking talino at mga kakayahan niya. Kahit sa munting halaga, makakasiguro ka na makakasabay siya sa mabilis na pag-ikot ng mundo. Sa New Era, karamay mo kami sa bawat hamon. Kaagapay mo kami sa bawat hakbang. Kasama mo kami sa bawat ngiti at tagumpay.
We now go to the island nation of Maldives, where the first case of coronavirus, the coronavirus variant Omicron, has been detected. Steffi Diwan will tell us more. Steffi, please tell us more.
Hi, Alma. Yes, Maldives recorded its first confirmed case of the Omicron variant on Sunday as the list of countries where the new and potentially more contagious COVID-19 variant has been found continues to grow. The case was confirmed by Health Protection Agency or HPA in a tweet on Sunday night. We have received confirmation of the first case of COVID-19 Omicron variant in Maldives, tweeted by HPA. HPA said the case was reported from genomic sequencing conducting on a positive sample of a tourist. However, the agency did not say where the tourist traveled from or when they tested positive. Omicron, first reported from South Africa on November 24, has been classified by World Health Organization as a highly transmissible virus of concern, the same category that includes the predominant Delta variant. The Omicron variant is a new variant of a COVID-19 virus. It is a new strain that has emerged due to mutations in the virus genetic structure. Use and awareness of the name Omicron variant became more common in news reports and public health communications in late 2021, including those about whether it could be potentially be more contagious or more severe than previous variants, such as the Delta variant. Maldives imposed new travel restrictions following the emergence of Omicron last week. Entrance of tourists from 7 Southern African countries such as South Africa, Namibia, Mozambique, Lesotho, Botswana, Zimbabwe, and Eswatini has been banned, while locals and work permit holders arriving from the countries are required to quarantine. No additional travel restrictions have been imposed yet, though cases have also been reported in several European countries that are top source markets for tourist arrivals to Maldives since then. And that's my quick update from Maldives. Back to you, Alma.
All right. Thank you very much, Steffi, for that update. And I'm looking forward to that update on what's going to happen to that tourist, and hopefully it doesn't spread as much. Thank you so much. Keep yourself safe.
Thank you so much, Alma. Reporting live from Maldives, this is Steffi Dihuan. We live in interesting times.
In other news, students from 28 schools in Manila returned to class Monday for the first time since the start of the pandemic, as the government expands its pilot reopening of schools amidst the decline in COVID cases. Let's take a look.
Happy.
Dahil? Bakit ka happy?
Kasi face-to-face na kami. Kasi makikita ko lahat ng classmate ko.
Sa kapatid.
Tapos yung teacher ko. Magbasa.
Dahil?
Kasi masaya dahil yung mga classmate ko, makikita ko din na magbasa.
Sabay-sabay kayo magbabasa.
Apo.
Excited po. Sobrang excited kasi after 2 years ng virtual class, balik na naman yung mga bata sa face-to-face. Tapos nakita ko din sa mga bata yung eagerness nila sa
excited kami lahat dahil alam namin kung anong hirap na dinanas ng mga bata, ng teacher, ng magulang at ng school. Napakatahimik ng paaralan. Yun ang hinahanap namin, yung ingay at saka yung mga batang gustong matuto. So itong binalik na itong face-to-face learning, talagang ang kasiyahan talaga ng bawat isa ay hindi mo masusukat, hindi mo matatawaran eh. So
Grade schoolers from Ricardo P. Cruz Senior Elementary School in Taguig City were greeted by their teachers with temperature checks, disinfection, and social distancing protocols. Many of them experienced the in-person class for the first time.
Staying in the Philippines, an education official on Monday said the pilot implementation of limited face-to-face classes in 28 public schools in the National Capital Region went on smoothly. In a laging handa public briefing, Department of Education or DepEd Undersecretary Nepomuceno Malaluan said the 28 public schools in Metro Manila are part of the additional 174 schools given the go signal by the Office of the President to conduct the pilot in-person classes nationwide. Take a look.
Napakahalaga nitong sa NCR dahil alam naman natin na yung character ng NCR as highly urbanized and congested area. So very important ito. And so far, it has been smooth. We have officials of the department that are on the ground at both the central office and the regions. Yusakraki, and up to this time, I've been monitoring and we have not received any adverse report as of now.
Malaluan also said learners participating in the pilot implementation of limited F2F classes nationwide will not undergo regular testing for COVID-19. He said learners would only need to go through a symptom and exposure-based test, which will not be a primary screening requirement for going back to school. While COVID-19 vaccination is required among teaching and non-teaching personnel, Malaluan said it is not yet a requirement among learners participating in the pilot run of limited in-person classes. The government started the inoculation of children 12 to 17 in November. However, the vaccination of children aged 5 to 11 years is being planned for early next year as the Food and Drug Administration awaits the application of emergency use authorization for COVID jabs suitable for such age group.
President Rodrigo Duterte on Monday said he is pleased with the successful conduct of pilot limited face-to-face or F2F classes in 28 public schools in Metro Manila. Duterte said he is particularly glad that the return of students to campuses happened gradually. Let's listen in.
I'm glad that they have thought of this. Do not be dismayed kung hindi sa inyo muna, because these are all experimental and pilot projects.
He also assured that other schools would be allowed to reopen after the conduct of pilot in-person classes is assessed. In the conduct of F2F classes, there are 2 participating schools, each from the cities of Caloocan, Las Piñas, Mandaluyong, Manila, Marikina, Muntinlupa, Navotas, Parañaque, Pasig, Quezon City, Taguig, and Valenzuela, and one participating school each from the cities of Makati, Malabon, Pasay, and San Juan. In September, Duterte approved limited F2F classes in maximum of 120 public schools, public and private schools in areas deemed low for COVID-19. Duterte repeatedly rejected proposals of the Department of Health or DepEd for pilot F2F classes due to concerns of more infectious variants of COVID-19. He, however, said he would consider allowing limited in-person classes in some areas seen to have low COVID-19 transmission. DepEd has been authorized to issue safety seals to school that will pass the agency's assessment on implementation of limited face-to-face classes. The country began its nationwide rollout of pediatric vaccination last month following its pilot implementation in October. To date, only Pfizer and Moderna vaccines have been approved for pediatric inoculation.
Meanwhile, a health official on Monday said the Department of Health, or DOH, continues with its contact tracing efforts to locate the 8 more travelers from South Africa. During an online media forum, Health Undersecretary Maria Rosario Vergara said the 8 unlocated travelers are among the 253 individuals who arrived in the country between November 15 and the 29th. Let's listen in.
Of the 253, 80 had been verified and located. 77 of these are returning overseas Filipinos and 3 are foreign nationals from Region 6. 8 verified but have not been located yet. Of the 4 retested, all were negative, including the 3 foreign nationals and 1 returning overseas Filipino from Region 6, who were retested last December 1. 71 are in facility quarantine, including the 3 verified foreign nationals. 4 returning overseas Filipinos are in home quarantine, while 5 were already discharged after completing the 14-day quarantine. I would like to highlight the following key messages for this week. First, improving case trend should not entail complacency since the threat of COVID-19 is still present. Second, to prevent the spread of COVID-19 and its variants, let us remember to practice the minimum public health standards such as wearing of face mask and face shield, physical distancing, regular washing of hands, and ensuring that there is enough airflow when inside enclosed spaces. And lastly, local governments must also continue to do active case finding to immediately detect and isolate cases and investigate case clusters, thus further cutting the transmission of COVID-19 and also ramping up our coverage, especially among the high-risk groups such as senior citizens and those with underlying conditions with our COVID-19 vaccine.
Now let's go over to Vietnam, where the Ministry of Health has called for keeping a close watch on foreign arrivals, especially those from countries in Southern Africa, in an effort to prevent the Omicron variant from spreading domestically. Units in charge of testing foreign arrivals for COVID-19 are required to strictly comply with preventive measures to avoid cross-infection at quarantine facilities and transmission from quarantine facilities to the community. Untruthful medical declaration or failure to abide by quarantine regulations will be strictly punished. The ministry urged localities to develop plans to respond to different pandemic situations, speed up vaccine rollout, and strictly control borders. So far, Vietnam has yet confirmed any cases of Omicron transmission, according to the ministry. As of December 5, the nation confirmed over 1.3 million COVID-19 infections, ranking 35th out of 223 countries and territories. Medical facilities are treating 6,854 patients and with severe conditions, including 4,618 people who are put on oxygen masks, 1,376 needing HFNC high-flow oxygen, 162 relying on non-invasive mechanical ventilators, 683 using invasive mechanical ventilators, and 15 supported by ECMO. The COVID-19 death toll rose to 26,260, accounting to 2% of national caseload. Over 127 million doses of vaccines have been administered in the country, with 54 million having been fully vaccinated.
We now go to Indonesia. Antara News reported that state-owned airport operator PT Angkasa Pura I has tightened health protocols for international flight passengers arriving through Bali's Wan Gusti Ngurah Rai Airport and Manado Sam Ratulangi Airport to prevent the Omicron spread. According to President Director Fahid Fahmi, the tightening of rules for international travelers is in keeping with regulations issued by the government. The addendum circular of the COVID-19 Task Force number 23 of 2021 and circular of the Ministry of Transportation 102 of 2021. And as per the regulations, the Indonesian government has decided to prohibit the entry of foreign nationals who have traveled to countries where the Omicron variant has been detected in the 14 days leading to their travel to Indonesia. The countries include South Africa, Botswana, Hong Kong, and countries that are geographically close to the Omicron transmission countries, namely Angola, Zambia, Zimbabwe, Malawi, Mozambique, Namibia, Eswatini, and Lesotho. Meanwhile, Indonesians arriving from those countries will be put under a 2-week or 14-day quarantine and asked to undergo a PCR test upon arrival and on the 13th day of quarantine. International travelers, both Indonesian citizens and foreigners, are now obliged to conduct 10 days quarantine. They also need to undergo PCR testing upon their arrival in Indonesia and on their 9th day of quarantine.
And the news continues here in ASEAN in Focus. Alma and I will be back after this.
Welcome back to the program. Back here in the Philippines Senate on Friday inched closer to a plenary vote to ratify the Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership, or RCEP, formalizing Philippine entry to the Global Trade Pact. At a marathon hearing on Friday of the Committee on Foreign Relations, presided by Senator Aquilino Pimentel III, administration officials endorsing RCEP were asked to commit assurance of support to the affected sectors given its impact on local traders. However,
the way to confront that fear is to face the challenges. I reaffirm PCCI support for the accession of the Philippines to the RCEP agreement. It is of vital importance that the Philippines be part of RCEP. We cannot miss this opportunity for our local businesses to be part of the global market. I'd like to take exception from the comment of a previous speaker that the gains that the Philippines will get are marginal. PCCI fights for markets in the world in which people depend on us for employment and livelihood. On the balancing side, we recognize the fears of some sectors about losing out in the competition. But those fears are not justified for us to isolate ourselves from the rest of the world. It will only aggravate our situation. If we don't do anything about the fear, the way to confront that fear is to face the challenges available in the world market. Inward-looking attitude has been ongoing over the past decades in the country that has made us lose our competitiveness in the global arena. And we cannot afford to be in that mode again of staying in fear. But we trust that we have the competence and capabilities to fight for the services and the producer goods that have high potential. There's a lot still to do by our government and by local industry, but the way to go is not to avoid the world market.
However, Norbert Chinquanco, Tugon Kabuhayan spokesman, expressed deep apprehension over the impact of liberalizing fisheries products that not only hurt local producers, noting that 1.9 million are listed as registered fisherfolk, but also expose Filipinos to very serious health risks given the laxity in checking imported fresh seafood. Again, let's listen in.
I don't understand it. We are self-sufficient in bangus and tilapia according to PSA, and PSA admit they are not counting our inventory, just our harvest. Yet we are sufficient in bangus and tilapia, and these are livelihood from Santa Ana in northern Luzon to Malita in Davao Occidental. I just can't reconcile them. At any rate, I look at RCEP similar to COVID-19. COVID-19 poses dangers to our health. At dahil doon, nagiging panganib sa ating kabuhayan. Ang RCEP, the same baliktad, the same pareho. Panganib sa ating kabuhayan, we are not against import per se, but we are against unfair practice. We should impose on our import what other countries impose on our export.
We are working on the different cases or issues with different countries just to address those various NTMs. For example, are the banana exports entering the Australian market? So it's an ongoing thing, Mr. Chair, but we agree with the principle. We mentioned already it's not about just market access, but also again, yung moving forward natin, the foreign direct investment and even local investment. Hindi enough yung meron tayong meron tayong mga investment incentives. If the companies will not go here, if the investors will not go here, because we're not part of all these globalized arrangements or agreements, hindi pupunta yan dito. What will happen now, unfortunately, hindi ko po nakita dito, except of course for the PCCI and the group of Attorney Abad, wala po tayong representative ng export sector, which again, and a lot, the manufacturing and industry sector, the services sector, which we are heavily exporting, the IT BPM sector, financial services sector, which will all be benefiting from RCEP. They account for 80% maybe of the economy. Ito, may iiwan pa tayo. Pag-umpisa ng January, yung 6 na country na ASEAN at 3 country na RCEP trading partners, they will start already with this RCEP, with or without us. At saan tayo mapupunta? Wala na tayong pupuntahan dito, wala nang pupunta rin dito. So Mr. Chair, yun po yung ating panganib.
According to Xinhua, initiated by the 10 ASEAN countries to establish a unified market by reducing tariffs and non-tariff barriers, the Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership, or RCEP, will take effect on January 1 next year, and more than 90% of merchandise trade in the region will be eventually subject to zero tariffs. The RCEP includes 10 ASEAN members: China, Japan, the Republic of Korea, Australia, and New Zealand. The 15 states' total population, gross domestic product, and trade all account for about 30% of the world's total. RCEP is especially useful in reducing and removing trade obstacles, creating the world's largest common market where goods and services could be more freely traded, thus accelerating the regional and the world economic revivals, noted O. Eason, a senior fellow at Singapore Institute of International Affairs.
The services sector, which we are heavily exporting, the ITB.
Meanwhile, President Duterte welcomed the forecast made by investment banking giant Goldman Sachs that the Philippine economy will grow the fastest in association of Southeast Asian nation next year. However, he expressed caution as the threat of Omicron lurks. Let's listen in.
The Philippines is expected to be strong economy in ASEAN by 2022, according to Goldman Sachs, a global investment banking firm. That remains to be seen. We still have to worry about the coming Omicron and how it would impact on the population of the Philippines.
In a November 18 report, Goldman Sachs Economics Research projected the Philippines' gross domestic product, or GDP, growth to hit 7.3% within the government's 7 to 9% target. Although it remains uncertain, he is optimistic that the country would meet its economic targets.
Meanwhile, Asian stocks opened higher on Tuesday as investors took heart from strong rebounds on Wall Street on hopes that the newest coronavirus variant will prove less dangerous than previously feared. Asian market. Now, the Omicron variant has been detected across the globe, but no deaths have yet been detected or been reported, with authorities worldwide racing to determine how contagious it is and how effective existing vaccines are. Top U.S. pandemic advisor Anthony Fauci said over the weekend that while more information was needed, preliminary data on the variant's severity was a bit encouraging. Hong Kong's Hang Seng Index was sharply up at the open, while Shanghai was slightly higher. In Japan, the benchmark Nikkei 225 index gained 1.25% in early trade. Singapore, Jakarta, Wellington, and Seoul were all slightly up, while stocks in Bangkok and Manila dipped slightly.
6 Philippine Army Reservist officers, including actor Captain Robin Padilla, seeking elective posts in the 2022 elections, have been relieved to ensure that the organization remains nonpartisan. In a statement Monday, the Philippine Army's Reserve Command, or RSCOM, said Padilla, who is seeking a Senate seat, quit his post as head of the communications panel of the Philippine Army's Multi-Sectoral Advisory Board. The Omnibus Election Code bars soldiers and law enforcement agencies from engaging in any partisan political activity, including campaigning for any candidate.
And finally, in our news, the Philippine Embassy in Thailand received some aid for humanity for the Filipino community there. The Philippine Consul General Michael Lyndon Garcia thanked the Church of Christ for the lingap sa mamamayan that were given and that will help the Filipino community in Bangkok. Here's Esther Odanga for our report.
Members of the Iglesia Ni Cristo organization in Thailand once again proved that the pandemic is not a hurdle to keep our kababayans or fellow men. Rather, it is a reason to all the more extend help to those who are in need. A happy Saturday it is indeed, especially for the Filipino communities here in the Land of Smiles who received aid to humanity, or lingap sa mamamayan, here at Philippine Embassy, located at 706 Sukhumvit Road, Bangkok, Thailand, in cooperation with Felix Y. Manalo Foundation. Iglesia ni Cristo members from Metro Bangkok and other parts of Thailand gathered early at the Philippine Embassy to hand out an estimate of more than 100 aid to humanity goodie bags. More importantly, hope and smiles to our kababayans whose livelihood were greatly affected by the current pandemic. The said goodwill bags, which were enthusiastically prepared and transported to the venue by the brethren in the church, contain non-perishable items such as rice, sugar, noodles, and canned goods. In order to ensure the safety of the event, health protocols such as temperature checking, wearing of face masks, and social distancing were stringently observed.
On behalf of the Philippine Embassy and the members of the Filipino community here in Thailand, particularly in Bangkok, I would like to express our thanks to Iglesia ni Cristo through its Aid to Humanity project to be able to provide food assistance to the members of the Filipino community who are affected by the continuing pandemic situation, particularly those members of the community who have yet to regain their employment, even as Thailand is on its path to normalcy.
Good day everyone. Ako po nga pala si Angelo, kinatawan ng Philcom Thailand community sa Thailand. Kami po ay nagpapasalamat ng lubos sa kinatawan ng INC, Iglesia ni Cristo, at sa tulong ng Philippine Embassy. Kami po ay nagpapasalamat ng lubos sa binigay niyo na biyaya. Ito pong humanity aid. Thank you so much po.
The event is definitely a success. All the glory to our Lord God. With God's help and the guidance of the church administration, we were able to organize the event following safety protocols, and the very purpose of the activity, which is to extend help to our fellow men, has been attained. We would like to commend and thank those who made this event possible. The officers and the members of the church, the Philippine Embassy staff, and all our kababayans who are part of the event. May we all stay safe and well.
To Brother Eduardo Manalo, we thank you for your leadership, and we thank you for the initiative of Iglesia ni Cristo, particularly this Aid to Humanity project, to be able to send assistance to the members of the Filipino community, not only here in Thailand, but all over the world.
We are forever grateful first to our Lord God for placing a dynamic leader in the church, always show their love and concern to us. To our dear Executive Minister, Brother Eduardo V. Manalo, thank you so much po for your constant love and guidance, so we can always fulfill our services to our Almighty God. We promise po that we will always be united with you in all the endeavors of the church for the glory of our Lord God.
Today's event showed the strong Christian spirit of the Iglesia ni Cristo members. Albeit they are also affected by the pandemic, they prove that they will brave all odds, no matter the distance, sacrifice, and the current state of the world, with a great big smile, love, high hopes, and firm faith. They also demonstrated that no matter what, they are always united to all the endeavors launched by the church administration through the dynamic leadership of Brother Eduardo V. Manalo. From Philippine Embassy, Bangkok, Thailand, this is Esther Odanga. We live in interesting times.
Thank you, Esther, for that coverage.
Yes, it's my pleasure, Alma. You know, this one has a very positive feedback, especially to the Filipino communities here in Thailand. They feel like they have a newfound friend.
Wow, that's
So
nice.
they're looking forward for collaborations with the FYM Foundation.
Oh, that's nice. Very good. Thank you, Esther, again, for keeping me company today here on ASEAN in Focus.
Thank you also, Alma. And before we go, I would like to greet the mom of one of our correspondents here in the Thailand Bureau, Mommy Jackie Carino. Happy birthday po from Veronica Carino and to all of us in ASEAN. And that is the latest news in the Southeast Asian nations. Stay updated about the ASEAN region. I'm Esther Odanga from Thailand Bureau, and we live in interesting times.
Thank you very much. And that's it for this broadcast. I'm Alma Angeles, and we live in interesting times.